Hi there. For today's reflective video essay, I'll be speaking of how I researched and practiced setting up and balancing a Jade Dick A2000 dual gimbal. For our short documentary, we as a group decided that we wanted to achieve smooth and professional looking movement shots. And to do this, we acquired a gimbal from one of the crew members' friends. As the cinematographer, it was my responsibility to research how one uses a gimbal, how one balances it, as it is not as easy as it looks. I looked online for the manual on how to actually use it. The manual was helpful to an extent, except I hadn't received the gimbal yet, so it was a bit difficult to imagine how to do it without it in front of me. So the next thing I did was turn to YouTube to see someone actually demonstrate how to set up the gimbal. I then found these two YouTubers who demonstrate camera equipment regularly, and I watched their videos, and then once I had received the gimbal, it was easier for me to remember what they did and do it myself. A lot of setting up the gimbal was just about playing around with the fittings and the settings. Okay, so now I'm going to demonstrate how to set up and balance the gimbal. So these first two parts, what I'm doing here is just placing them together. This is about the easiest part about setting up the gimbal. You're just placing it, finding the right position, and then you will screw it up. See that bottom screw, and just screw up until it is tight, and you can work with it after that. I then attach our makeshift base plate to the camera so that I can slip it into the slot in the gimbal. I unscrew that front screw, the front one, in order to slide the camera onto the gimbal. That one is for when the camera is leaning up and down. That is the screw you will use to adjust the camera. That's the front to back axis, and then the other screw is meant for the side to side, the left right. So what I just did now is twist it. I twisted the camera so that it's in the correct position for me to now start adjusting. Okay, so what you do now, once it's just sitting on the gimbal, it's going to lean either to the left or the right, from the front to the back, and depending on which way it's leaning will determine which way you're going to shift it on the different plates. So it is still leaning to the right, so I'm going to shift the camera to the left, try and figure it out, and there we go. It's still, you can see that it's still leaning, still very much leaning, but now, so it's leaning upwards, but it's not leaning to the right anymore. So I can screw that back up and now focus on the front to back. So I see the more I push it forward, the more balanced it becomes. So so now I can screw that back up because it is now balanced. The batteries go on the left hand side, so where my left hand is, that is where the batteries are, if you just unscrew that. And on the right hand side of the gimbal are the buttons. So I'm just playing around with the buttons right now, panning, tilting, just showing you how it works.